Welcome to the Working Audio Tools podcast, the home of all things mixing and mastering. This week we are going to be talking about how we are speeding up our workflow in the studio, little tricks and tips, I nearly said ticks, and processes that we've implemented, some of them inspired by other engineers. Baby Audio sponsor the Working Audio Tools podcast and their newest plugins, Humanoid, the vocal tuner on steroids, and Transit 2, the motion and transition effects plugin, are both available with 40% off for just $79 each. As if that discount isn't enough, get an extra 15% off any Baby Audio order at www.babyaudio.io with VIP code WATT15 at checkout. This discount stacks on top of all Baby Audio Black Friday sales deals this month. Links in the description below. Paul, what's brought about this conversation for you this week?
I think for me, having the topping DAC amp in here now, so I've got a DAC amp combo in here, and I made a video about it last week. Now, one of the biggest features of that was that it has a EQ in there, so it's got PEQs, and I could change everything via the remote, and it's really cool. You can add in like a target, so a Harman target or Emira's engineer target that I can't share with anybody yet, and I could EQ all my headphones, and I could import frequency responses of the headphones from a website, and I showed everybody how to do it. It's so amazingly cool.
Good video.
Yeah, and the great thing is that because I've got the preamp level, I can set all the level of the headphones, so when I press the button and change to the EQ, the level is, at the right level for that headphone. So every headphone is at the same level. So I don't need to change levels or anything. It's just switch it on, 2 clicks of a button, job done.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And it doesn't sound like much, but finding the remote and looking for the right button and then changing it, it's a few seconds. And if you're doing that several times in the mix, that does add up. I like it. That's a good one. I think I want to get hold of that headphone amp combination, but I'll need to do it by the end of the year because I've made a New Year's resolution, which we might talk about later.
I've also implemented the topping EA-X8 for a better workflow. So I've got a hybrid setup. Again, I made a video talking about that. And essentially, the past 2 months has been me tinkering with my setup in a way where I can just get everything to work within like a click of a button. And everything's routed in a way where I could just easily switch between things. Even on like the top-in app, I've got these presets where I could switch to tracking mode, which bypasses the optical SPDIF. So I've just got the outs, which means that all the info goes through here for tracking. So I've got the speakers off, and then I've got a speaker mode where that'll just switch on the Tantrum Angry boxes that I'm looking at right now. And then I've got a topping mode, which bypasses these headphone amp and the EA-X8 and also the Angry boxes. And it's just genuinely all things that are click of a button. So when I'm mixing, I can just move very quickly. Even the fact I'm utilising the Calais in here again, and I'm using the Arc box, which is a lifesaver if anybody's never had it. Again, I've got a video talking about that as well. Because I don't, even when I'm in the DAW, I don't need to go and bypass a plugin and switch stuff on.
Yeah.
I can genuinely just go, right, see on this remote, genuinely, I just switch the output. I'll just go like, okay, right, think, switch the amp to pre instead of headphone amp, and it'll go to the speakers, and they're calibrated, and they're at the right level. I think gain staging is something that I've found is just so important. Yeah, I didn't realise how much of a faff it is when you have more than one pair of monitors, more than one pair of headphones. It's just that gain staging can be a little bit of a pain in the arse, because if you don't get it right, you can be kind of guided in the wrong direction. For example, if your headphones have a certain sound and a little bit too loud, you might lean in a certain way. Where if everything's at the same level and you've done your job right and you've gain staged everything correctly, you're just hearing the characteristics of every piece of monitoring. And it's been a little, took me a wee while to set up because I had to recalibrate everything, but now even in the DAW, I've got the fader port 16, and I've got loads of wee shortcut buttons that I've got like 6 of them there, and I can just press them, and I've got them all for different monitoring. So I could switch from one thing, I could switch on real phones, I could switch on different things. So genuinely, no matter where I am, whether it be in the DAW or outside of the DAW, I can switch to any monitoring I want. They're all EQ'd and they're all at the right level, and it just speeds up the process. Because what I found was that when I was mixing, If something was a faff, and when you're in the groove, if something's a faff, you won't do it. You'll just be like, even if it's like going to take you 15 seconds, sometimes you're just like, no, I'm in the groove. Where for me, if it's just like press button, it just makes you want to move faster, and it makes you want to switch. And I don't know, maybe I'm impatient, Ed. I don't know. What about you?
I'm very impatient.
I know you are.
Well, I mean, the epitome of my impatience was getting a Stream Deck, which I can't recommend enough, because that is on my left-hand side, and I literally tinker between apps on my Mac. Instead of having to use my touchpad to scroll down to the bottom where all my apps are, scroll through these tiny little icons, and then find the right one, click on it, pops up. I just move around with my fingers. It's great.
And how much is that? Because we were speaking on air, off air, sorry, and I was shocked at the price of them. I don't know why. I think it's just because they've been out for ages. I just thought they were quite cheap. I thought it was like 50, 60 quid. I was like, fucking £200. The tight Scotsman in me was like, whoa.
Okay, so for you, Paul, there is a Stream Deck Mini for £60, but that's only got 6 buttons on. You might be able to have different scenes, like on the bigger one, but then you'd need to use one of the buttons to swap scenes. So
right,
that's
okay, so it's still a bit of a faff. Yeah.
There's a bigger one that's 135, within your budget, and it's only 200 quid, but for me, it's great. I've got it programmed to load up WhatsApp, YouTube if I want to upload something, the Flock, Trinov app, Tidal, stop and play in Tidal, go back to home screen, the G-Con Wes Audio app, Final Cut Pro, OBS, Photoshop, Lightroom, Pro Tools, Logic, Universal Audio Console, and obviously the big one, Chrome. Google Drive, my calendar, my website, Squarespace. Every time I think, I go to that often, or even less often. These are the ones I use regularly. But you just program in places to go. You can program it to set up folders. You asked earlier about multiple commands, i.e. something I wanted to try and program was to go between my Amphions and head speakers. I've not quite figured that out yet, but I'm pretty sure there must be a way of doing it. If in doubt, I will ask Paul Ashmore. He just seems to be a wizard on all this stuff.
Yeah, because I was thinking that if there was a way that you could switch outputs as a command, then because I know in Mac and Windows it's the same thing. You still need to like physically change, the output. So I'm just thinking if you could set a command, then if, for example, if one speaker was going at the top end and then one's going to Trinov, and you need to separate that and switch it via core audio and stuff. If you've just got a button, just the time that can save you. And it's just what I find is that when I'm doing ABs, I want it to be an AB. I want it to be quick. That's what I like about the speakers, and I've got it set up in a way where I can go from the Callies to the edifiers really quickly, and then I can go from the Callies and the edifiers to the Angry Boxes. I've got these little workflows. I can do one via the remote and one via the top-end software, like a preset that I've got. And just having those quick ABs does help me when I'm mixing to make kind of certain decisions, because I know that very quickly I'm like, right, okay, that's not an issue. You know what I mean? In these three speakers, especially with headphones, because you've got to take it out and you've got to plug it in another cable, and then you got to physically put it in the DAC, or again there might be a volume change because they're all different sensitivities and stuff, and that's why I like the top end, because again I could quickly change the PEQ, and so I could do it in a way where, because that's got 3 outputs, I can have 3 headphones connected, and if I have them kind of set up in a way that are close to me, I can just press generally 2 button clicks, middle button, down, okay, maybe 3, 4, 1, and then again it's just flick to see whatever PEQ it is. Maybe 3 button clicks, and then I just pop the headphones on. And it's quite a quick AB. It's like the quickest I could do it. But even that's not perfect. That's why it's difficult when I always find it quite amazing when you do your videos and you talk about the differences with interfaces, because there is a little bit of a difference involved to be able to try and judge the differences, isn't there? Because you've got that kind of delay.
It's not an exact science at all. There's probably a way of routing things to get it out,
like splitters and stuff.
Both interfaces. We can't use splitters because then you're halving voltages, and that affects impedance.
True.
I had a long conversation with Tom from Universal Audio about that.
So did I, actually.
That went way above my pay grade.
I know, it does. I know.
Yeah, I mean, to swap between speakers, I just have to press this Tidal button, and it's not the Tidal, Trinov button, and then just go between the 2 presets. But it's not as, it's one more click than just one click, so it's 2 clicks. So that's something to work on. But with a lot of these things, you think, well, hang on, it's going to take me 10 minutes to figure that out, and it's going to save me 2 seconds. But over the course of a year, that 10 minutes could save you an hour. So, an hour longer we can spend procrastinating on Instagram on the toilet.
What about in the dot, Ed? Is there anything that you've got kind of workflow hacks that you've had? I don't know, because I know you've got Pro Tools and you've got Logic, but there's certain things about each DAW that you find, you maybe hacks that you found that are kind of integral for you to mix quick. Because the thing is, when obviously you're trying to work with clients, especially if you're planning on doing fucking maybe 2 or 3 a day, you need to work quick and you need to be like in, out, shake it all about.
Pro Tools has got this really good feature that helps you work quickly, because sometimes it just doesn't work, so you can't do any work. So you just have to go.
Oh, yeah, happened to you. It's happened to me in the past as well, I know.
And then you realise that it's just because you moved the cloud off your Mac and onto your laptop, your iLock permissions thing. So lesson learned on that one. Yeah, I got Pro Tools working again. Mainly just having really expansive templates and even smaller templates. Even doing artist templates. I've got templates for a couple of artists in Logic, a couple in Pro Tools now, but the problem is, as you know, as probably we all know, as our workflow evolves, the templates then need updating or become redundant. So one job for probably next week is, or by the end of the year, is updating my Pro Tools template with all the I/O routing that I want to use with all the new Wes Audio gear I've got. Speaking of speeding things up, I got lazy when I was using the Analog 500 series, as everybody predicted, as I predicted myself at the back of my mind. Recall is a pain in the balls, so I've swapped everything out except 2 Rupert Neve 542s and my Neve preamps and my DBX de-esser. And I've got a space for 2 more things, and I don't know what to put in them, but also I've run out of I/O, so that's just a pointless question. But replaced all of it with the digitally recallable Wes Audio stuff, which all sounds very good. There's 1 or 2 EQs that don't quite sound as good as the other ones I had. The IGS Rubber Bands mastering EQ had something that sounded great, and it was stepped, so it was as close to recallable as possible, but you've still got to take a photo of it, and then, because it was 0.25 dB steps, it was quite easy to get a little bit out. I mean, barely audible amount out, but the Wes stuff is fully digitally recallable, whereas the EQs are very clean. I dare say the Prometheus is a little on the dry sounding. But I'll be doing content on this stuff next year, because I'm going to change how I do YouTube next year, I think. So what I need to do is go into Pro Tools, update my session again with likely routing options, and then what the Wes Audio app does is obviously saves all the settings. So when you recall a session, it recalls all the analog hardware immediately, which is ridiculous. So that will be the best of both worlds, hybrid analog and effectively in the box, but with analog sounds, which is also the appeal of the controversial Mac DSP, which we've managed to not speak about for an entire week, Paul.
I know. And what about the UF8? Are you still using the UF8?
Yep. UF8 is great, mainly because it's tactile. Again, with the analog stuff, I get so bored looking at a screen and clicking stuff. I like to be able to fiddle. I like to fiddle with knobs. Small
easy now, easy. Don't offend the American customers. Come on now.
I'm just talking about my faders and my panning knobs, to be honest. I don't know what you're on about. Yeah, that's good. The one that's not getting so much use now is the UC1, because I basically got that to facilitate soloing buses and auxes in Pro Tools. And I've since found out that if you assign everything to an aux folder, you can do it that way in Pro Tools as well. So that's basically sitting there now as a minor desk reflection alleviator to help the amphions measure better.
Sell it.
Yeah, I can, but it just, it looks better, doesn't it? I might use it,
See the amount of things, ladies and gentlemen, thems and days that he fucking wastes his money on. The amount of times I'll be like, you bought that, you using that? No, not really. And he'll sit there and justify it. And I'm like, just get rid of it. If you're not using it, sell it, right? In terms of my PreSonus...
You have called me out there. That's probably the one thing left that I could sell.
Get rid. Paul Third telling Ed to sell
But
SSL?
at the moment, though, it's
Oh my
it's
God,
a really
shock
bad seller's market. It's a
It
buyer's
is.
market.
I know.
Everything's cheap. So I'd maybe get 350 quid for it. I can't remember what I paid for it.
Yeah, 350 quid, still 250 quid at the end of the day. Jesus. It's better than nothing, is it?
Yeah, but I've got nothing to spend it on now.
I
So there's
forgot,
no
well,
point.
keep it. Jesus, this is Ed's problem. Honestly, it's like he gets money in, the first thing he thinks of is, how am I going to spend this money? Fucking walked into Paul Ashmore's studio and walked out with a fucking Better Maker limiter. I was like, Ed, you were only meant to be there for just to, like, have a chat, like, have a bit of a nosy. Walks out with a fucking Better Maker. Like, oh my God.
What can I say?
Self-restraint, boy. That's what you need. That should be your New Year's resolution. Self-restraint.
Well, you stumble upon the subject. DistroKid sponsor the Working Audio Tools podcast, and you can get 30% off your first year's subscription using the VIP link in the YouTube video description and podcast show notes. DistroKid makes distribution of your music easy with unlimited uploads, and you get to keep 100% of your royalties and earnings. Join over 1 million artists who rely on DistroKid to get their music into Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube Music, TikTok, Tidal, Instagram, and all other streaming platforms now and in the future. The new DistroKid app is available on iOS. Go and download it from the App Store now. From here, you can upload new releases. You can see your DistroKid earnings and withdraw these earnings. You can view and share your hyperfollow links. You can check your streaming statistics from Spotify and Apple, and even add and edit lyrics and song titles. So keep track of your releases on the move with the new DistroKid app, available on iOS. Download it from the App Store now. Speaking of workflow, Paul and I have discussed a few times on the podcast, but definitely a lot off air. What we do as YouTubers is faff around extensively, learning equipment, measuring speakers, calibrating headphones, calibrating rooms, and it's a ball ache and it takes a lot of time. And for me, interface comparison videos have taken so much time. Speaker reviews have taken so much time. So my two New Year's resolutions is I'm not doing any speaker reviews unless I get paid a hefty amount of money to make it worthwhile. I'm not going to do any audio interface comparisons. All the comparisons I've done have been off my own back. All of them I've done unsponsored. But it's a faff and a ball ache, and that takes me away from doing what I want to be doing in the studio, which is actually mixing. The other thing that Paul stumbleth uponeth was the distraction of just buying new gear and swapping stuff out. Paul has done some revamps and tinkers in his studio, and I did the same. I repatched my whole studio, which was a disaster in hindsight. I ended up spending a week figuring out all the patching. One of my Hoser cabling ends had broken, so I've lost an output. But it's all right because I've just repurposed the input of that to the Neves, so I saved that. That was good. But just stuff like that took ages. I had one unit patched left and right the wrong way round. One unit was patched into the output of another unit and vice versa. Just all that stuff that took time figuring out. I've sorted it all out now, but from now on, I'm not repatching anything. I'm not plugging anything new in. And the big resolution is, I'll say it here now, I am not buying any equipment next year. Everyone I tell that to is just like, yeah, bollocks. One guy's given me till January.
Even me, I'm like, bollocks.
One guy's given me till April and one guy's given me 6 months. Now, there is a caveat. If a brand wants to give me something in exchange for a review that isn't a speaker on interface,
yeah.
I may facilitate that. But yeah, my goal is to not buy anything because it's just a distraction. It takes time.
I agree. And I think, I was saying this off air before we started. For me, I kind of really, that's me done. Like unless somebody was to be like, oh, do you want a pair of PMCs? I'm like, okay, fair enough. Or ATCs or something, I'd take them. But at the end of the day, like I'm sitting here looking at this studio and, this is just my control room. And like somebody walked in during the week and they were just like, Jesus, Paul, could you need any more speakers? I was like, oh, it's as much as I could fit. But I've got a fucking Atmos room in there. I've got more speakers in there as well in the live room. So, I've got PreSonus for tracking. I've got the Kali IN5s, the Edifier SE1000 Mark IIs, and the Tantrum Angry boxes. And then headphone-wise, I've got...
That's more speakers than me. Oh, no, wait, I do have 4 sets of speakers with the Anker soundbar. Okay.
Yeah, you've got that. And then the live room, what have we got? I've got the iLoud Micros, INUNF, And then I've got the iLoud MTM Precisions, and I've got an Atmos Kali setup in there. It's fucking ridiculous. Headphone wise, I've got 4 Hifimans. I've got Odyssey MX4, Sony NDR MV1s, the Olo S5X. I mean, and I've got like arguably the best fucking, DAC amp for me for mixing. You know what I mean? It's got everything set up for me at the click of a button. I've got all my shortcuts with fader port 16. Like even like I've got to the point now on my sessions where I've just got set buttons because they've got scenes in Studio One. I've talked about it before, where I can just press a button and the visuals will just go to all the drums. So if I can go, right, I just want drums, bass, vocals, instruments, guitars, whatever scene I set, I can easily switch. I could set certain parts of the mix. So if I'm like, say, right, okay, I feel like I want to make a big change, but I want to be easily recallable in regards to an A/B, you could like set a scene and say, right, okay, I think I've done whatever I'm doing to the, say it was some of the guitars or a big EQ change or whatever, save that as a scene, and then I could switch back and forth between them. You know what I mean? All things like that for me have just sped up.
That's interesting. So
Have I never told you?
A more macro umbrella approach to just being an EQ setting in a plugin.
Yeah,
like you can in
totally.
FabFilter stuff. That's interesting.
Yeah, and it's a lot, even like workflow hacks that we always advise is that to have a reference A/B plugin. Again, I've got the Melda one, I've got reference from Master in the Mix. Some people use the
adapter.
That's it, the adapter. And I think that's really important to have a really good workflow where when you not walk into the session, but when you load up the session, you've got the references that you want to use for that session loaded in, and you can just go press the button, and then you could quickly A/B level matched, and you could, at any point of the mix and go back. And I think these are all the workflow things that you don't think are important, but they really are, because I think these are the things that get you to a point where you get the mix done quicker, especially the monitoring. Because if I can quickly go through all the monitoring and everything's sounding as it should, and I'm not getting anything that's kind of jumping out to me, then at that point I'm like, okay, the mix is done. You know what I mean? I'm like, what else could I ask for? I've got translation to fucking nearly everything that I've got in the studio. And then if I want to go back to a certain thing, if I just want to make a tweak, I've got it here. I've got the faders, I've got sends, I've got everything at the tip of a button, or again a fader that I could just quickly make moves. And then you get to the point where all you have to do is just genuinely sit and listen, and you're like, right, okay, job done. That it was all the workflow things for me, not like the plugin tricks, not like all of these things that people show you on YouTube. It was mostly workflow things, and especially monitoring, workflow things that got me to a point where I started to feel confident when I'm finished a mix.
Yeah.
I've got certain headphones for certain things. I'll start a mix with the Nanda Nanos. I'll get the drums, the bass, and the vocals right. I'll get those slamming, the foundation right. Then I'll move to the HEs, and then I'll try and get all the soundstage stuff, panning decisions the way that I want it. Then I'll go, right, okay, let's go to the speakers. Let's check that out. And then, then I'll just go backwards and forwards. If I need to go to real phones, I could quickly do that. I've got a preset set up where I can just go click Olos. And I've got for the Olos now, I'm using the second headphone out of the E8X8, and that's set to its specific gain level, doesn't need EQ. I can just go into, press a button on, the fader port, and it changes the output. The master just have real phones on in a setting, and I can just flick through all the different real world scenarios on Olo, and it's just all these quick things. And I know for many people it'll be like, oh yeah, but I could do that, it's an extra 15 seconds. Sometimes, as Ed said, when you build all that up, that could be the difference in maybe 5-10 minutes in your mix. And if you're thinking about you're trying to do 3 mixes maybe a day, as we know some people in the industry are, all of these things count. That's why so many people have assistants to do all of the RX and all of the a lot of the editing, cleaning up clicks and pops and getting everything aligned. I mean, there's even some assistants that will even do all the time alignment for drums. I mean, genuinely, like a lot of big mixing engineers, they aren't fucking about with, fucking auto align or whatever. They're just walking in and being like, okay, that's your job as an assistant. I walk in, I listen, I make the moves that I need to need to make. I mean, same with Jason Joshua, I
was going to say, Jason Joshua, even he gets his assistant to lower the kick drum when there's a kick and snare played together. He gets his assistants to lower his kick drum by
manually,
4 decibels on each one.
There's clip gain he uses for that, isn't it?
Yes.
Like he'll do it, like manual clip gain,
Yeah.
Or again, he'll automate it. But there's lots and lots and lots of things that are really important. And I think what I learned is that with mixing, it is stages. I think when I take longer at something like a mix if I try and do it in one go. If I try and do it at one sitting, I just think I fatigue my ears. I always prefer, in the morning, I'll pre-mix it. I'll get it done pre-mixed, all kind of the boring stuff, all the things that I know work. Then I'll go, right, take a break. Export stems, in Studio One, or track stems, whatever. That's what it's called. I'll export everything with certain processing that I know I'm going to have on it. And then I'll then bring it into here. So I'll do it on the MacBook. And then I'll listen on one set of monitoring, normally the in-ears, get a vibe from there. Then I'll export them, take a break, maybe half an hour, 45 minutes. Then come in here, a brand new fresh ear setup. And then, I could then start working creatively and get the mix to a point where it's finished. And then if I feel like that the foundation's done, then I could, take another break and then take it into the Atmos room, add in some of the objects that I feel are going to work around the foundation of the mix. And then, do your EBs and then bring it back in here, check if I can get, the stereo and to be done. And it might sound like a faff, but for me, see just those breaks of going from one place to another, to a different set of monitors, to a different scenario, it kind of resets my brain a little bit. And actually, many people would think it would take me longer. It actually takes me not as long because my decision making is more decisive, because my brain prefers to split up the tasks. That'd be something that's very different. You get a lot of people that want to walk in, 3-4 hours straight and just, bang it out. That's just not the way my brain works. And I think that's what's important, is trying to find the way that your brain works and what makes your brain work the most efficient. How does your brain work, Ed? Do you like to split things up, or do you like to go sit down in one session and just kind of hash it
out? What I will often do is do the primary session work, as it were, i.e. everything until effects. So gain staging, any compression, EQ, level balancing, panning. Do that in, say, a 3-hour session one day, and then the next day, once I've gone home and listened to it, and it's basically translating, then do the effects, reverb, adding the sparkle stuff, any automations that need doing. And then, ideally come in the next day and then sign it off and send it off on fresh ears. So it's not about doing a full day on one mix. It would be doing a mix over a few days, but that's just usually because I've not had any, major time pressure delays on stuff. Just quickly, how are you moving between the two rooms? Have you got a server connected up, or are you literally taking things on a dongle or something, on a thumb drive?
Yeah, so I've got a few of the big orange hard drives. So I just generally go from one to the other. I'm thinking about servers, and if there is a server that I can use to quickly do it. But see, to be honest with you, it genuinely doesn't take long. I just plug it in, export it to the fucking. I'll create a folder, that folder, and then I just take it in. But what I like about that process is that it's physically taking me away from listening to the mix again. I physically have to be away from the monitors, and it's given my ears that break that I struggle with. We've spoke about this before. Prizzy talks about it, and loads of people talk about it. I think Prizzy was talking about breaks every 15 minutes. That's really hard for me because of my autism. I have ADD, so I hyper focus, and I find it very hard to step away from things. So I have purposely found that when I split it like that, even just putting stuff on a hard drive, is giving me that kind of break. I'm not thinking, I'm thinking physically about getting this on here and then moving to another setup. Yeah. It just kind of rejuvenates my brain a little bit and kind of,
speaking of giving your ears a rest, something I do, which I never used to do, and it baffles me why I didn't, is every time I go looking for a plugin, I always stop the mix playing. Just because it might take you 10, 15 seconds to find a plugin. It's not much, but give your ears as much rest as you can. Yeah, and totally. Then you can do long sessions. So you mentioned in Studio One, you can press a button and it'll take you to all your drum channels.
Yeah.
Is there anyone in the audience who knows how I can program my UF8 to do the same thing in Pro Tools? I've not quite figured out how to do that. So, for example, I use aux folders, and it would be great to be able to open and close aux folders at the touch of a button, either on my Stream Deck or UF8. If you know the answer to that, please leave a comment and you'll be our favourite viewer.
Star of the week.
Star of the week, yeah. Teachers
We'll
pet
give
of
you
the
fuck all. We'll give you fuck all, but yeah, you can be the star of the
Aren't
week.
you going to give them your topping DX7 Pro? Isn't that what you said off air?
Am I fuck? 500, remember, £550. That's what I won for it. I'm going to put it up on Reverb tonight because I've not had anybody get in touch, probably because they're like, I'm not paying $550.
Put it on eBay and then you don't have to pay any reverb fees.
Oh yeah, because they've changed it now, haven't
Yes,
they? Because that's why I
just
moved to
sold
Reverb.
Loads of stuff on. Well, I went to Reverb because it was cheaper than eBay.
Yeah.
And then eBay is now cheaper than Reverb. So,
Yeah,
sorry,
good,
Reverb,
good.
you are going to lose out.
Yeah, I actually prefer eBay. I was using it for years and years and years. But yeah, look, there's loads and loads and loads of different things that you could do to quicken up your workflow. But I do find that what's interesting is that it does cost quite a lot when you add all of this in, but you'd be amazed at how much in the long run being efficient helps. Because the more you slow yourself down, I think the less it, the more, it impacts your creativity. Because if you're thinking, I can't be bothered to do that because I need to go to that, and that, before you've already, as soon as you're thinking, I need to go to that, you're kind of getting out of the groove. You know what I mean? I like to be in a way where, like, if I'm just sitting there and I think, okay, the snare verb's too much, press, send, on a fader, and I can move and I could work quick. And I think that's when I'm mixing, I'm finding that's where I get the most done, is when I'm decisive. The longer I take on things and the longer I procrastinate and the longer I, just ponder, the more I start to find it harder to make, conclusive decisions. I second guess myself a lot more. But I think I think that's one thing that probably worked with the CLA thing. When you look at CLA, he just moves so fucking fast. He's just like bang, 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 delay. I don't know if that's for the Mix with the Masters videos, because he's already mixed the tracks. So he kind of knows what he's doing. I've read comments online about people that have watched him work and they say he genuinely does work that quick. He's like rapid when he works.
But he's got everything pre-patched. He's got his four delays and 4 reverb thing, the 4x4 technique that he uses that he can blend in to each other. He's just got them pre-patched and pre-set up. He just has to configure the tap delays.
Same with effects and stuff. Like, see in my chain, in my template, I've got all the reverbs and delays. I've got like 8th note, 16th note, maybe 3-4 different reverbs. I've got my vocal chain set up. I've got the parallel set up. Everything's set up, and I've got presets made so I can quickly go into a preset. You know what I mean? And just work really quick and just get stuff done. I think that's really important. Because I couldn't go back to the days when I first started. And I would sit there and I'd ponder, should I use this reverb for this vocal? Should I use this reverb? Maybe use that reverb. And I'd sit and fuck about with all the settings and the pre-delays and, you know what I mean? How long should I make it? And maybe I should blend this reverb. Before I knew it, I'd spent 45 minutes on a reverb. And then fucking 20 minutes later, I'm like, I hate this, take it off. You know what I mean? Just like, pick a reverb, you know what I mean? Pick a reverb and go, right, there you go, right. And just pick a reverb that works maybe like 7, 8, 10 out of 10 times. Or if it doesn't work, you've got another one that you can go to. You know what I mean? Even you look at Mark Daniel Nelson, he's got sessions like that in his multi-tracks where, he's just got like a set reverb. And it might be actually a plug-in chain of certain compressors he has bypassed. Just try them. He's just working quickly. You know what I mean? Have tools in your arsenal that can give you certain sounds that you know well.
Yeah. And if you have a template with all of this set up and different compressors, you can A, B, and you gain stage the same. I know in Logic I used to set every clip to minus 10 dB peak, and immediately you just get consistency in every mix because you're hitting everything at the same amount, give or take a dB here and there, but very minor changes. And that's what I need to do in Pro Tools so I can be hitting the analog at the same rates and not really have to be tweaking with that. That'd be a cool
even
one.
Unity Gain and Master Plan. Like, I always use Unity Gain and Master Plan. So when I'm like pushing the level up to get like the whatever, LUFS, like I'm thinking I can push the record to, I'm not being, affected by loudness. I've got that gain staging in place where when I'm pushing it, I know when too much is too much and I can bypass it, you know what I mean, and hear it. Where even, I think, it's funny because many people give Vitsa, like White Sea, like a hard time about auto gain. But if you actually listen to him, a lot of the times he talks about, the importance of gain staging and the importance of Unity Gain and, being able to work fast. Because the thing is, as soon as you understand that when something's louder, it could sometimes, well, not sometimes, mostly, impact the decision you're going to make for better or worse. It could make you second guess yourself. Where if someone's at Unity Gain, you can just go, that compressor isn't really doing much. I don't need it. Right, that's it done. Or yeah, well, that's actually quite destructive. It's not maybe doing the sound I want it to do. And then try something else. It's all these little things that are boring as shit. But we've said it before. It's the boring things that actually kind of, make great mixes. All the boring things like fucking doing your editing properly and making sure your drums are time aligned and, just creating session templates and, again, thinking about workflow things. So instead of someone taking you 15 seconds, it takes you 2 or 3 seconds. All of these things keeps you in a flow. I mean, even if you think about your Michael Browers and stuff, when they talk about, flying on the faders, they had 3 engineers. He went, I had one part of the console, another engineer had the other part of the console, and the other engineer had the last part of the console, and we all knew what our jobs were. And it was like, I would ride this up at this point, I would bring that down. He would ride that up and ride that down. And it was playing the mix like an instrument and stuff like that. That's cool.
That was the whole Beastie Boys thing. They used to do that. There'd be 2 of them at the desk and they'd be jumping around the back of each other to change things. And it would be a dance that they'd practice to get the live automation right. I mean, how fortunate and lucky we are now.
I know. And you can only do that while having the right workflow at the end of the day. You know what I mean? That's what the UF8 can give me. At the end of the day, I can set, click one button, read, play, and then I could just like sit there and, have the automation. If I don't like it, press a button, undo, fucking redo it again. We are so blessed to have all technology at our fingertips, where as we've said it before, there is no excuse for you to not get something done these days. All the workflow is at your fingertips.
Hey there, Ed here. You may recognise my voice from doing all the other DistroKid advert segments. This time I didn't want to just do a typical advert talking about stuff to do with DistroKid. I actually wanted to give you my feedback about the service because I genuinely do use DistroKid for uploading my music. And I know Paul does, and it turns out Dan Worrell does as well. I've used DistroKid since 2019. As you can see on the screen, I have 6 releases so far. It is genuinely super easy to use. The tracks get into Spotify within 24 hours, which is remarkable. Apple Music takes a little bit longer. I'd suggest giving that 10 to 14 days. The hyperfollow links are really useful for advanced promotion of your tracks, and the promo cards are really great visual aids for social media promotion. Ooh, I particularly like that one. DistroKid collect all the royalties from your streaming services, and here you can find an itemized breakdown of where all your income has come from. There's also a DistroKid referral where you can save your friends $10 per sign-up by creating your own VIP referral link.
In terms of workflow, there's probably other things, but again, leave comments down below of your workflow hacks and things that you find has kind of helped you out. So we'll kind of park that there and we'll end this episode with what's going to be happening next week, because I'm quite excited, Ed's excited. So as of Friday... Well, actually, yesterday. Actually, when you're watching this, Ed will be in the studio. Ed is travelling down to Scotland and he is going to be in the studio. He's going to spend the weekend with me. And yes, when you're watching this, we will be together. I don't know if we might even be recording next week's podcast episode. But in that podcast episode, we are going to be going back to the mix multi-tracks, which is what many people are wanting us to go back to. So it's I think it's an SSL multi-track. It's a track called Roses. It's like a country track. And yeah, it's a really, really, really nice sounding multi-track. And for anybody wondering about the quality of the mixes, I have to say I've already heard Ed's and it's very, very good. So I've got quite a task on my hand. I've got a task on my hand. I'm going to see if I can get the drums to finally beat Ed Thorne. I think I've only beat Ed once. I think it was the last one we done. I think on your track, you were like, I think maybe Paul got some bits of the drums right. So yeah, it'll be interesting because I'll give you one thing before you hear it. I am going to try and layer some Joe Carroll samples in, because I noticed that there was 3 snare drums that he uses quite a lot, predominantly 2, and one is, I think it's a 5.5 mahogany. He calls it Bill Mahogany. I think it's a high tuning, and then one's a Japanese. It's 5.5 Japanese something dampened, I think.
Yeah.
And then the last one was, I think he uses it for a certain effect. He calls it thump something. So I'm going to try and see if I could layer them. Because already when I was doing the premix, I did the stems for a left. And yeah, I was like, I genuinely think this is going to give me quite a decent snare sound. And I was kind of starting to see how Joe kind of layers as snare sounds. Because I think what the high snare gives you is this kind of nice kind of and I'm going to try and have a go at trying to like outdo Ed for drums, because his drum sound is pretty good on this.
Well, that's very kind of you. And my secret to that was not using any samples. It is all raw.
I know, so I'll be even more, because I knew I'd thought that. So I'm going to try and outdo him and try and be fancy and use rely on Joe Carroll. But so Ed's going to be here. He's going to be able to see the studio. And so what are you hoping to get out of this trip, Ed?
An enjoyable 3 days out of London. Some fresh air.
Go for a walk without fucking all the pollution.
I
know.
Some fresh, crisp snow, it's not set to snow though, is it? Famous last words. Well, I want to see what you do, where you do it, and hear the studio for myself, hear the genius of this Atmos room for myself, remind myself what the HE1000s sound like, and slag you off about your cheap speakers, basically.
Because you've not heard the edifiers, have you? They're the only ones you've not heard.
I've not. I've not heard Cali speakers either.
Oh, have you not? Have you never heard Cali's? No.
Not in like a sensible environment where I can actually critically listen to them. I'm looking forward to hearing all that. But I think you and I, Paul, we're at a point where we just don't need anything else in the studio.
I agree with you.
I almost feel guilty at how good my studio is now. There's two things I could maybe improve. One would be updating the X16 to a Lynx Aurora. But to get all the I/O I'd want, that's $6,500. Can't be bothered.
It's just needless. Absolutely needless.
I would like a set of the X-Machina Ganymedes, but again, $7,000. Can't be bothered, and nobody wants the PSIs, so I can't raise the funds for that.
Don't say I didn't warn you.
Well, yeah, I didn't quite anticipate how difficult they'd be to sell. I mean, I've had some infuriating offers on eBay. I've had to really hold back sending sarcastic comments back, but I've tried to be a better man than that. But they are going to be very, very, very lovely home stereo speakers in my new flat. I'm going to hook them up with ARC, and I was thinking of putting the topping in there so then people can play Bluetooth in my lounge through these $10,000 fucking speakers.
I know, it's fucking crazy. Jesus
Never
Christ.
mind, because I've got the heads in now and they're doing... They're complementing the Amphions very nicely. Videos of which on the way, of all three speakers with the Angry Boxes. Full reviews with some nice puns in. Check out those.
And there's even a drum kit in the studio now for Ed to have a bit of a play. However, he's not unless I get the plywood in. So for anybody that doesn't know, I've got a big massive window in there, and when we got the drum kit in, I got the guy to play it, and you could hear the drum kit from the high street. So, yeah, I've had to think long and hard about how I'm going to try and soundproof this. So, I'm going to get people, joiners in the work, to cut me specifically cut plywood. I think it's 10 mil, 10 or 12 mil. So, front of the window and then the back. So, there's quite a recess. So, I'm going to get front and back covered, fill that with entirely with rock wool. And then there's a wee side little sliver piece of glass. I might need to maybe see if I can cover that as well. And the hope is that that's going to be as soundproof to the point where if somebody's walking past, it doesn't genuinely sound like they're playing in the street. It just sounds like, oh, somebody's playing drums in their house. You know what I mean? It's not like it's going to upset the neighbours.
What you could do is what a guy I used to work with used to do. He had a studio in his garden, and he had neighbours. It was like a triangle setting. He had neighbours on two sides of it. I helped him build it, and it was never quite fully soundproof for drums, so he would hang like a battery-powered FM radio up in view of the street and the neighbours, and just leave that there. Sometimes he'd have it playing like really low-level radio, and other times he'd just have it there so people assumed it was the radio making noise and not the studio.
Fucking hell. Quite clever to be.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to it, because I actually quite enjoy it. It's funny because I'm autistic and I'm not really the best with social interactions unless I'm kind of in full control. But I
can't wait to come up to Scotland.
I actually quite like people being in the studio. So again, I've had Kirk from QFX, he's been in, and I've had a few other people in as well. And obviously the studio it's essentially open, right? Me and Laura are doing the video this week, and it'll be done before Ed comes up. I think we're maybe doing it Thursday, I think. So that.
Do you mean I'm not cutting the ribbon and opening the studio with a bottle of champagne?
No.
Well, I thought that's why I was coming up to Scotland.
There's a good bottle of Jack Daniels in there though, my good stuff. So you can have a bit of that if you want. You can have a half. You can have a maybe tiny sliver. That's all you're getting. But no, I'm looking forward for you to hear the setup, because at the end of the day, this has been a setup that I've been working at, and again, I do enjoy it when I'm up at Ed's and I get to hear what he's got, and yeah, it's good to for people to hear what you've been working on and get honest opinions, because Ed will tell me very honestly in a very constructive way of like, that's shit, I'm not too keen on that. He'll tell me honestly. But I think I'm interested for the Atmos, because I do think my Atmos room is pretty unique from like the other Atmos rooms I've heard. Everybody that's been in that room has been like, the low end in your room is fucking incredible. Maybe a bit too much, but I love it. So it'll be interesting to hear his take on my room, because it's a bit of a smaller room. But yeah, it's fully treated. Arguably one of the best treated rooms in the country, I would say, in regards to like when you're in that room with the Carleys. I mean, I didn't think that setup should sound as good. Like there was a guy that was in my studio, and he said to me he went to another one with some very, very, very expensive speakers in there, and he was like, there was parts of your Atmos studio that I was like, yeah, theirs couldn't touch. So I've done some stuff right. So I'll be interested for you to sit down there and we'll have a bit of a play about, because I think Atmos sounds different in every studio you're in, depending on the size, depending on the speakers, depending on the layout that you've got, depending on the correction that you've got and stuff. So yeah, it'll be good. We'll go for tea. Ed can finally meet Mrs. Third. They've heard each other's voices, but they've never met in person. And yeah, it'll be a good weekend. I'm looking forward to it. And yeah, I think, Ed, are you going to try and get some good walks, even though it's fucking Baltic down here? Are you going to try and get some walks while you're down here? Are you just
I'm going to have to walk every day.
Studio weekend.
I'm going to have to walk every day because there's only one hotel in Errol, and it was £200 a night, and I couldn't be bothered paying that. So I found one, like an Airbnb hotel place that was on booking.com, so not Airbnb at all. That's about a 45-minute walk away. So I'm hoping there's pavements either side of these little country roads.
Don't worry, I'll pick him up. You'll be alive, right? It's generally a 5-minute drive for me. I'll pick him up, drop him off, and he could sit there, and I'll probably come back and I'll be like, Ed, what have you done? It's like, yeah, I just thought I'd reorganise everything. Why? Just thought I'd fucking piss you off. Fucking have a camera for when I come in. Be fucking next week's podcast intro. Me fucking raging at Ed, chucking about my studio because he's fucking moved all my Atmos speakers and shit.
Could do some annoying things like swap the inputs round on your new compressor.
I'm a new Fairchild.
Yeah, on your new grandchild. So left is right and right is left, and see if you notice, because you probably might not.
Yeah, probably not. But yeah, so that's what we've got planned for next week. Back to the multi-tracks. And for next year, me and Ed do want to go back to doing more multi-tracks. I think we'll have kind of strayed off the beaten path the past maybe 2-3 weeks. I mean, we'll have spoke about quite a lot of good topics, but at the end of the day, what we always talk about, this is a journey, and it is about us keeping mixing, us keeping our brains fresh whilst we wait on clients, to kind of chap on the door and stuff. So keep busy mixing, get better, learn on the journey, and hopefully you can all learn from our journey as well. So yeah, there you have it. My name's Paul Third, that's Ed Thorne, and when you next see us, we will be both in this room. A little bit wider, we'll have to sit a little bit further back, and yeah, look forward to it. My name's Paul Third. Ed, have you got anything to finish up on?
It's been emotional. See you soon.